Alright, it's recording.
Alright, boom, we on.
Alright. So, how do we want to start this? So it's good to connect with you.
Yeah, Scarlett, it's going to be nice to finally get this thing, put this baby to bed and get this conversation recorded.
So, when I first found your content, I was looking up, what else was out there regarding Tantra and just like traditional Tantra. And I came across your video about the sex versus celibacy. And you were talking about, the semen retention and different things. And I resonated a lot with what you were sharing. And so can you share a bit about your journey with Tantra and how you got started?
Well, in the beginning of my sexual encounters in life, I was more aligned with the tantric way of being, and it took me getting away from that for me to have to go and find the definition of that. Like, in my development, I really wasn't releasing, only occasionally, like just from masturbation, but never really with a partner. And I never really wanted to masturbate because I would be lethargic for sports the next day. So it always kind of was a conflict of interest. So then I really didn't spend much time releasing and having to regenerate throughout my teenage years. And until I got married when I was 19, and then I was in a relationship that was pretty much, I guess, codependency or whatever, to where I was expected to release. So it just rapidly drained my energy to where I had to, do my research and figure out, what was it that I was doing before that was different, and what is that called? And that's when I ran into Montauk Chia's work and got into that whole, I guess, line of thinking, or that definition of what Tantra is and explanation of what it is, black and white Tantra and stuff.
Right. And what did you notice? Like, how did it change the way that you felt?
Well, it was definitely a sharp contrast, a lot more clarity, just from not releasing, just less fog, and just more energy in general, just more testosterone, I guess, to where I could perform on the field better, the way I would like to, and just less distracted. I was more easily distracted if I was releasing. So I really felt a sharp contrast. Honestly, it was night and day.
Right. And like, how did that shift your relationships with women, and how did it change how you related to people?
In some ways, I guess I felt like kind of vindictive towards females that they wanted me to release, and I guess it kind of became a kind of an egotistical challenge in a sense, where I was constantly like dueling with females that were, I guess, proud of their sexual abilities, and they felt like they could be a formidable challenge. So I felt like for me, I took it as like, I guess, competitively, and ran with it for a while, and kind of just created a separation between me and a lot of people in general, because you know a lot of males are just interested in releasing, so it already put me in a different room than most males mentally. And then when it came to females, like I feel like since most don't encounter tantric male, that they maybe consider things to be more special than what they were because of the way I handle myself, and I think it created a lot of enemies with females because people don't want that energy to go away, and at the same time people like to give up their energy. It's like guys get addicted to releasing all their energy and giving it all that responsibility, because energy is responsibility. Guys like to give that away so that they don't have that responsibility, and I think that a lot of females I encountered, they like a lot of people, it's not even just a female thing. I think a lot of people are really quick to commit to other people, especially if they can get physical satisfaction out of it, but they're not really quick to commit to themselves. So it was kind of like, I just saw that. I saw a lot of ugly get brought out of females because they expected things to continue. They expected to be able to release this energy with me. And then when I would withdraw, because I kind of desensitized myself to things because the way I was doing it so competitively, I got to the point where sex was pretty much sport, and I was just trying to master it to where I could not release if it was emotional connection, not release if it's physical, not release if it's mental connection. And once I got to that point where I mastered my body like that, I was like, I need to share this with other people and share this with other males so that they can realize, like, that there's other levels of sex, and then there will be other females that could experience that, with these males, so that, I guess it could be just a more harmonized picture between male and female, because it's pretty one-sided, I guess, in a sense, where males just, dump all their energy, and then they kind of really can't even be good to themselves, let alone good to the female. Since all the males are compromised in this way, females kind of don't even know what to demand or what they're missing, because it's just not present in any. So the standard is just low, I feel like, for males, and it kind of just brings the standard down for everybody.
What do you mean by what they're missing?
I mean, just like a more intimate connection, something more real.
Right.
It's not something less carnal, and it's not to say like Tantra has to be slow and I guess submissive and type of sex every time. But I mean, it's really anything. It could be any kind of sex, fast, slow, whatever you're into. But I just feel like a lot of females probably just never. It's a totally different mind. The guy's gonna have a different mind, like the way he allocates his energy every day, what he allocates his energy to. I mean, like, it's going to be different if he's already not releasing. Like, it's just a different echelon of thinking and creating, and where you're coming from, literally, because you're not releasing. Like, you're not coming from that low place, because your blood is, people's blood is constantly in the reproductive organs when they release like that, so their consciousness is at that place. Because blood is basically liquid consciousness.
Right. So that's interesting. You said that it actually, when you started becoming aware of the sexual energy dynamics, you had a little bit of resentment towards the feminine, in a sense. Is that like because traditionally the feminine energy has been able to sort of use that seductive energy to lure guys in and kind of control the masculine? Is that like what you were seeing?
I don't know. I think it's a little different from my scenario, because I feel like I always end up being more feminine in a lot of ways, in principality than the females themselves. Like, because for the most part, especially at this point in time or whatever, people are females. They equate sex with, they equate carnal male behaviors with success. I feel like in a lot of ways, like, And so if a female can behave like a carnal male, it's considered success. So for me, I don't know. I was always the person that was pretty much more astute emotionally in any of my connections, and like I always kind of felt like I was doing things kind of like how females do. Like, I'm having this sex for you. It's not really for me.
Wow.
And so I felt like I kind of resented women because it was like I kind of felt like, yeah, I figured it out, like, in a lot of ways that, you know, it's an energy thing. It's not really like anything other than that. For the most part, a lot of it is just energy, like, because people are so mindless, you know. I mean, male and female, for the most part, you're going to run into a lot of people that are just driven by the energy and just a vampiric state of being, and so I feel like I was mad at myself for letting that happen to me, and then I kind of just took it out, you know, on females as if it was their fault.
Wow. I mean, that's very admirable of you to have that self-awareness and to admit that.
Yeah. No, I was raised by women, so I guess, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm pretty close with, I guess, the way a lot of women think, or a lot of women go about living. So I guess it gave me some insight on I guess, emotional awareness, or whatever, however you want to look. You know, just the subtle awareness of emotions and the way things flow, and you know, it might not seem like a contract, but it's you know, you might not have it written out, but it's an energetic contract. As soon as you commit this energy, then you're already getting involved in a contract.
Right. So you felt like your intention was more giving and your partners more taking?
Yeah, like I just felt like, for me, yeah, like I was always the one that was pretty much just helping them get theirs, and then I would pretty much just, you know, that's more so the goal of it, like, so the other person can be pleased, you know, find pleasure in pleasing, and then, you know, just let them enjoy theirs, and then transmute the energy that they release, because, you know, they're giving it up anyway. I might as well just transmute it and use it to be better to them and myself, you know. So I feel like, yeah, that's kind of what got me caught up in general. Like, when I first went vegan, you know, I jumped out the gates like 12 years ago, went into the raw thing, and, you know, I felt like I got into it so fast that I just felt so ahead or far from everybody that I kind of, every time I would get in a relationship or a connection with somebody, that I just wanted to, like, evolve them. I was so committed to evolving them. I just, you know, if I'm super raw vegan or, you know, mostly liquids, then I run into somebody that eats terrible. I'm just trying to focus on getting them to be vegan and, like, you know, create a closer middle ground. And it just really torched my own energy. And I feel like that's kind of what it always was. Instead of just continually evolving and just meeting people at evolution, then, you know, I was, you know, instead of doing that, I was constantly trying to meet people where they would allow themselves to meet me. And I kind of just resented people for that.
Interesting. So you generally were like in codependent partnerships, you're saying?
Well, yeah, I just always felt like that I could see their potential more than them, and that I was just trying to wake them up to their own potential, and it always just made me tired. And I don't really ever feel like I needed a relationship no more. So it was more so just like just wanting to share this state of being with somebody, and preferably a female for sure, you know. So it was kind of what it was more so. It was like, man, it was like having all this bricks of gold and you just can't share any of it with anybody. But at this point, it's kind of better that you know, that you put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others, or everybody's gonna drown.
Right. I think a lot of people on this spiritual path just have like this genuine compassion. Like, we want to give, we want to share, we want to be in unconditional love. But I think sometimes the way that translates in how we apply it isn't necessarily like good for the self. And the self is the source of everything. So it starts with self.
Yeah, or just, I mean, like, selflessness, really, because, like, it really, you know, not to be a dick or nothing, but it really is not self, you know? There's no self or other, you know, everything is one. So just like being selfless and that state of selflessness, yeah, like you can be more appreciative of people and you can be more supportive and stuff. It's just like, you know, you can't force things, you know, you got to see things for what they are and not what you want them to be, and go from there and just be content with your own development. Because that's the only way, you know. Creating a clear pattern is kind of the only thing people will really acknowledge and respect and apply to their life. Like, the rhetoric and all that, like, it doesn't really stick, you know. But if they see, like, a living, breathing pattern that's simple, that they can, you know, that shows them how to practically change, you know, practical change is really the big thing. I feel like a lot of people just don't see that. And as soon as you start trying to police other people, like, you start to break down. There's no way that you can maintain your pattern while you're trying to, you know, make somebody else's pattern correct.
Right. Like when you take the focus off your own inner state.
Yeah. You know, you begin to move away from the peace, and then that's just the oneness of it, you know. Like, if you're not already meeting at that place, then you can't expect to meet at that place. And you can be pleasantly surprised, I mean, but it's kind of like you just meet people where you can and remain in that place within where you just, you don't feel that lack, you know, or you don't feel like you're lunging to change people.
Right. So you think the semen retention sort of like brought up some shadows in the beginning?
I mean, yeah, you know, for a while there, yeah, like, I just feel like I did things out of a competitive nature. I wasn't even doing things out of, like, I guess, love or whatever. It was more so like, which female can I conquer next? Like, and I'd imagine it's the same for a lot of people in different respects. Like, it's like, you know, if you get the girl that works at McDonald's to do this for you, it's not really as big of a deal as, you know, getting the senator to do it for you. You know, if you get the senator lady to do it for you, then it's just a bigger ego boost. And so I just feel like that's kind of like how it went, you know, whether it was that societal leaps or if it was just different women with different qualities and, like, dominating different or conquering different women based on my perception at the time. That was kind of the way I did it. I was like, man, if it's not a challenge, if I'm not being challenged in these ways, then, you know, I'm just going to continually just discard females. And, like, that's kind of what I was doing. I kind of created a pattern of knowing how to, like, be the best first date, you know, in, like, maybe the first 2 weeks. Like, that whole psychology that comes with the first 2 weeks, liberating that energy through Tantra and what it does to a person that has never experienced that, it's kind of like, it became a huge incubus cycle where I was kind of, like, preying on different energy. But with the idea of steel sharpens steel, and I just want to run into a female that's basically a succubus at the same level of my incubus, to where I could, like, kind of meet my match in a sense, and it kind of, you know, it definitely showed itself in a lot of ways. You know, I ran into females that were super competitive, and in some ways, I got better and it taught me a lot, and in other ways, it made me jaded, and I feel like it just gave me, like, a plethora of experiences. You know, going through the different I guess types of females, the way they approach sexuality and stuff like that, and exposing them to somebody that practices Tantra with their whole life. You know, it's like your whole your whole lifestyle is different than somebody that might just like, you know, try to practice Tantra here and there or semen retention, you know, for 90 days or something. But if it's your whole focus, it's just a different, you know, you're coming from a different premise than them. It's kind of like, it's almost not fair in a lot of ways, you know, because it's kind of like, in a sense, it's kind of like a porn star, whereas, you know, you're already going into a super, super detached, and this is business and sport, you know?
Yeah.
And you know where they're coming from with it, because, you know, whether you've been in that position or you just repeatedly mastered being the Mr. Right Now for the first 2 weeks. That's pretty much what I did, you know, I mastered, like, being Mr. Right Now. Like, I could give you a great 2 to 8 weeks, and then my energy is just spent, because I was a vampire, you know what I mean? I was pretty much like, I needed to get the energy out of the person. Then, you know, if I didn't feel like they were going to evolve me, you know, then I would just pretty much discard, move on to the next. And it was kind of like, it's like pheromones in a lot of ways, you know, because people are operating from such an unconscious level. It's like if you have sex with a female and you blow their mind or whatever, you know, you liberate a bunch of energy. And then you go out into public, it's almost like other females can sense that, and then you're already retaining your semen, so your energy is already in a different place. So it's almost like shooting fish in a barrel. It's like throwing a grenade in a barrel. So like I don't know, I felt like that was kind of like what I was doing for a while there, and it got me to the point where I was literally, you know, abusing the breath work. Like I was saying before, like in the last time we talked, it was like I was abusing the breath work because I would have my routines and my cycles with females, and I had so many different females coming in and out of my life that I was getting a bunch of energy that I really couldn't manage, and I had no plan for it or anything. So I was just constantly just blindly transmuting it with the breath work until I reached a point where I could literally just not breathe. It was like a panic attack, and I just had to I had to just sit still for like 2-3 days. I couldn't talk to no females, and I just knew like this is from accepting this energy that, you know, it's really not good or whatever. It's corrosive. So that I feel like that was kind of a big part of it.
And I think it's super interesting that you say essentially like you were attracting like the same frequency of that. Like you said, you were sort of in an incubus role, but the women you were attracting were in the succubus role. And I think that's a super pertinent point to bring up because socially we think that, you know, it's men who go out and lust after sexual energy. But would you agree that it can be both genders that sort of fall into that parasitic pattern of seeking validation, affection, whatever, through sexual encounters?
Yeah, it's like a huge pride thing, you know, and like a lot of people, whether they're like have a small number of sexual partners or a high number of sexual partners, it's kind of, especially with females from my experience, there's like this deep pride of like, if I give you this, then this is special, and because, you know, whatever preconceived notions that they have about their vagina and their sexual abilities, they have that pride to where they're like, if I give him this, then he has to change. And you know, some really good girls, you know, that really had the same structure in their mind, you know, they didn't even realize. I feel like it was more so unconscious, and I guess that was kind of the messed up part about it. But, you know, people have that pride in themselves, and they just feel like that if you know, this can't happen to me. If I do this, then he has to change and he has to conform. If I do this, and I just continually use their pride against them. So I feel like, you know, a lot of people will do that. You know, they'll get caught up in that expectation and that pridefulness, and they won't let go of something just because of the pride. You know, and it's unfortunate, you know, because a lot of females probably should have just walked away, but they didn't because of pride. And just expecting things to change based on the way they approach life. Because some were really good women, and they just felt like, well, if I approach life this way, then he has to change. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. So,
yeah,
you know, it's a deep of all people.
Of relationships, right?
Yeah, definitely. Of all, in general, I think pride is the reason people hurt themselves because they feel like they can do it. It's like, it's like a pride thing. Like, it's a deep pride,
to want to say, like, to be like, oh, like, I got him to bend to my will, or like I got him to do what I want, like something like that.
Yeah, even that, or being able to lie to yourself. People really feel like that they are slick enough to lie to themselves, and that's kind of like a sense of pride in itself. Like, because some people they know better, their intuition knows better. Like, this dude's not going to change, but if I keep affirming this, then it's just a deep pride, that.
What kind of stuff did they want to change about you?
Well, I guess it just boiled down to, since I was so blunt with things, I would just be like, I guess I put a lot of people in that position to where I forced the competitiveness out of them. Whereas, like, you're not the only one, and the way I behave makes it clear. And I just felt like females would be like, well, they just in their mind, a lot of them felt like there's no way that you can treat me like you treat the other ones if I give you these things or this, that, and the third, or whatever, if I manage it another way. But I just was so blunt about it. I felt like a lot of females that should have never gave me the time of day and should have never stuck around, they did, just because they I just kept picking on their pride. I kept just saying, like, no, there's no way that you'll ever get that out of me. And I was really blunt, like, yeah, there's other females, and this is how I operate, and this is what I'm doing. And I felt like the more blunt and disrespectful I was, the more partners I collected. It was really crazy.
Oh, man. That's actually, you're not the first person that's told me this. I've heard from a few different guys that they genuinely believe that women have evolved, or like women like guys who are assholes, that somehow, like, if a guy treats them bad, then they want him more. And I think maybe that's true for women who are used to dysfunction and have, grown up with those patterns. But
yeah,
I think it's more so like those ego relationships. And both people kind of end up suffering when they come from that kind of intention. Just like the conquering and the possessing.
Yeah, I think what's getting played on is that at some level, I really feel like in a natural level that females really don't want to win. They really want to win. Then, like, because in a lot of ways, I feel like as soon as you become subservient, they lose respect for themselves. They're like, why would I even settle for a man that would jump through these hoops and be so subservient? And I feel like when a guy comes off as like authoritarian, then good or bad, a lot of women will respond to it just because it's a dude, at some guttural level, he's taking charge, even if it is bad. And it's just, I guess it's just it's not a lot of men that's exemplifying that. Because I don't feel like any queen wants a jester, she wants a king. So I don't feel like they queens don't really want to win themselves. They just want a winner. From looking at the human psyche of things, as soon as you jump through hoops for a female, it's almost like a challenge. It's almost like what she's supposed to be doing, like testing to see if you are really the king that you're supposed to be. And like the more that you jump through the hoops, the more you just become a jester, and then she kind of has to hate herself because she's like, why am I with a jester?
That's kind of true. I think actually both genders do that to each other when it's an unconscious relationship. And it's coming from ego and just wanting to be the dominant energy.
Yeah.
Can I Can I pause for a second to see how the audio recording's going so far? So how would you say, so this all happened like when you started the semen retention, you just became this super magnetic alpha male, like girls left and right, just like in your power. And then how did you like evolve out of that ego mentality? Or did you?
Yeah, no, I did. I feel like it just ran its course, man. It really got like I just made things too boring in a lot of ways. Like I got to a point where I just got too good at those phases of the game. You know, it was just I was never really getting to the other phases of the male-female interaction. So I just got really good at those phases, and I never really got to experience the other levels like of evolution between male and female because that part of it continually got in the way, and I just got tired of it. You know, I literally just I feel like the well ran dry in a lot of ways, like where I couldn't even act like I cared, you know, and I'm seasonal with my sexuality in a lot of ways. You know, maybe I could jump back on the horse and be a terrible person again. But I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't really like to speak like absolutely like that,
but it sounds to me like you don't like that's not fulfilling to you, and you know it's not now. And
yeah, the energy it just don't match no more. Like it is not matching the energy that I needed I needed to experience those things and then create the book so that I could, you know, communicate to myself as well as other people. Like I had to write it down to communicate this to myself better, to articulate it better, to where I can express it in a concise way, and then I wouldn't have to really visit that ever again in my life. And I felt like that maybe expressing myself in these ways and writing a book that I maybe could run into somebody else that was, you know, on the level or whatever. I hate to be like that on the level, but, you know, I guess that was kind of like my idea at the time.
You mean to attract a woman who understood, like, the tantric concepts and, like, what you were practicing? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I felt like if a female read my works, that if she could stomach that, then it would be a different type of female. And I just felt like that whoever would, that would be more so somebody that I'd be inclined to learn with. And it just became more specific, I guess. You know, like a lot of things just couldn't fill that void for me. You know, the void changed. You know, it got smaller, I guess, to where now it's just more specific. Before I could just throw a bunch of energy in the pot, and now it's just a smaller void to where it's just got to be a specific energy for evolution. And I just don't. At this point, I don't really see it, and I don't see it kind of like in a. I used to feel it like in my like energetic radius. Like you can kind of feel things coming. Like sometimes you feel it when you
like when people come towards you and stuff. Like you're calling people into your experience.
Yeah, you know, or like that, and you can feel it. Like, man, I think in the next 6 months, I'm probably going to run into somebody like this, or maybe when you're on your way to a gathering, you can feel it. Like, yeah, I'm probably going to meet somebody at this right now, and I just don't have that feeling in me. You know, granted, I'm in a different state energetically, so maybe the feeling has also changed to a different feeling that I'm not familiar with yet. You know,
I mean, this is very fascinating for me to hear because coming from the feminine perspective and just speaking to all my female friends, there's a general sort of like consensus or, you know, feeling among a lot of women that, you know, they feel that the divine feminine is evolving faster and like there's a lot more conscious women and, you know, and they feel that the masculine, the patriarchy and like the old guard is like taking time to catch up. So in a sense, it's kind of refreshing for me to hear, you know, a divine masculine perspective that you actually have these high standards of what type of woman you're trying to attract, and that you want, with your standards. And I think it's important that we're talking about this so people listening, I'm sure a lot of Divine Masculine can relate to what you're saying. And I think it's important that we stop discounting the masculine as just this like animalistic, sex-starved species, because I genuinely think they're not. I think, both men and women, we want love and sexuality together. And there's no shame in a man admitting that he wants that. He wants something deeper. He wants that real alchemy.
And if you can't get it, sometimes it's better to be alone. I mean, it's always better to be alone than to settle for some company that's not really fitting what you need in that point of evolution. So, I mean, I don't really, it's for as far as the masses go, I can't really even. I really don't see it coming, man. It would have to be like a massive calamity. Maybe my ideals are just different, you know what I mean, to where I'm too extreme, I don't know, but I just feel like, for the most part, it's like, a lot of females equate value to making them, pleasing their male, making them ejaculate, and I just feel like it became like a lot of training, a deep training in a lot of females to where they just, if they feel like they're not making you release, then they take it personally. So then they feel like they don't have value, so it creates an insecurity, and it's like, it's something that I felt like I saw a lot of there with that. That it's just like a deeply ingrained training for females to extract that energy, feel proud about it, and that is like a stamp on their womanhood in a lot of ways. And like, I don't know, like, as far as like running into females that are like really okay with it and that really, they embody the tantric lifestyle themselves. I really don't know, man. I really don't know if it's possible in my lifetime for me to really run into what I have, the conception in my mind, what I've conceived in my mind as being what would be formidable. But I just feel like it's not in my radius. It's not even been in my radius. You know what I mean? Like, usually you feel it. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of feel it. Like, if you're like, man, this feels like a year where I might get in a relationship or I might be more sexually active. In my life, I've always felt it coming, in a lot of ways. Like, okay, it's kind of coming in seasons. Women kind of come in flurries, and then there's no women at all, and then it's a bunch of women again, and that's kind of how it always went. And now, based on the way things are, where I position myself, I mean, I really don't see how it's possible because, it's just a different value system. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, like I live in a remote setting, and since I live in a place like this, it's not so many females that would even give this lifestyle a chance, So
right.
It's already cutting down the possible numbers just because of the location, and so like, but for me, I'm like, man, this is where I've established a lot of my peace. And I just feel like this is most of the lifestyle I would enjoy is more rural and away from things. But with the value systems of today's people, male and female, I just feel like you would shock a lot of people. They wouldn't be used to not having certain comforts, and I just feel like that I've kind of already made it impossible in a lot of ways, like, because generally speaking, the females that would be okay with this would be the ones that I really wouldn't mesh with. So, like, I don't.
Wait, you're saying the women who would want to live in a remote forest setting, you wouldn't be attracted to them? Or what are you saying?
Yeah, like the ones that can really live out here, like really live out here full time.
Yeah.
Like, those are the type of women. Those are the type of women that are like, you know, they're like chopping chickens' heads off and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
You mean like they tend to be more masculine or what?
Yeah, like mountain women. You know what I mean? Like a mountain woman. You know what I'm saying? Like if she can live like that, you know, anybody that can live out here is generally that kind of female. You know what I mean? Like it's not some raw vegan female that does breath work or whatever like that. Like that type of.
I don't know about that. I mean, I've definitely met some spiritual divine feminine that do like that. I think sometimes though, just on this path, because of how solitary it can get, we can sometimes get in our own way with limiting beliefs that become like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, no, I'm welcoming surprise, you know, because I would be extremely surprised if any female that could, you know, because you know, a lot of females might talk that like, I want to live off grid, but they want to live off.
Oh, like will they walk the walk, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, you know, like if she's like not really comfortable with. Like, not to say that you have to, but I'm just saying, like, you should be comfortable with shitting in the woods or, like, you know, showering outside. Like, that type of shit, like, it shouldn't bother you. You know, not to say that you have to do those things, like, you know, but it just kind of, like, comes with the mindset. Like, if that bothers you, then you're probably going to be more decadent than the way I'm living. So it's like, I don't even want to hold you back. You know what I mean? Like, go live your life and on the grid and be on the grid, or go to Costa Rica or whatever, be in your eco village and stuff and do that, you know what I mean? But for me, like, I just feel like the way I position myself in a lot of ways, it's like, I don't see it happening. Like, at this elevation, at this distance from society, like, it's just, I'm asking too much probably in a lot of ways. So, like, and I'm not really willing to compromise, you know, location at this point. So I don't see how it's possible, to be real. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, at this point, the only experiences a female could give me would be having a child. You know what I mean? Because I've been married before. I've lived with females before. Only thing that I could get out of that would be, out of a connection like that, would be having a child. That's the only thing that's kind of like that I haven't experienced in this lifetime. And like, I just don't know how it would be possible. Like, you know what I mean? She would have to really mesh with these ideals up here. And I just don't see too many females that are really willing to live off the grid, you know? Like, it's not, and I don't really hold it against them, you know what I mean? Like, when I first moved out here, I wasn't really, I guess, ready to just jump off the grid and everything like that. Like, I kind of ran from it for years. I just would, like, detox up here, be alone, get super healthy, and then go back into society, retox, destroy myself, and then have to limp back up here to recharge. And then I just kind of got to the point where, I just got sick of it, and it didn't make sense to continually detox to retox. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm at this point where it's like, I don't see why should I come off the mountain if I know what's down there anyway. Like, and I hate to be so absolute in that way, you know, but it's like, I don't want to subject somebody to a lifestyle that they don't feel like they deserve. So we're just going to hate each other anyway, if that's the case. So at this point, you know, I don't see, it would have to be, the value systems of people in general would have to really change for a female to see value and being up here with me to that magnitude.
So would you say, in general, it's more important on the spiritual path to embrace that solitude if that's what you have to do for your personal evolution, as opposed to that human need for connection and intimacy? Is it kind of like your inner practice comes first?
Yeah, like if you can't, you know, I gotta put my oxygen mask on before I can assist other people, man. If my quality of breath starts to change, and my pattern starts to diminish, then I pretty much got to pull the plug on it. It's like I'm not even gonna be able to be good to the person. So I kind of don't see it's not really effective at that point anymore because they're just gonna get a bad shade of me anyway.
I hear you. How do you feel about the possibility that with the current state of events and how the energy seems to be shifting in different ways, like, do you think maybe there would be a possibility with people awakening and becoming more conscious that maybe there would develop, some more off-grid communities or nature communities? Is that something that would vibe with you?
I think, it's kind of like the king thing again, where it's like, man, I'm the king of my own castle here. Well, I don't see, I don't see the point of me merging with people that are not also kings. So it's kind of like I don't know.
You mean like kings, like on the same frequency, like people who are able to keep up in a way?
Yeah, same frequency and like off the grid living and like self-supporting as far as the income and everything. Like all of those things that I find value in my personal life. That I really don't see how it would be possible, man. Every time people come to me with this community thing, it's always somewhere else. Or
you've had people approach you with an idea or what?
Yeah, it always seems to be like somewhere else in the world, or it's a bunch of broke people. And I'm just like, man, and not to judge or nothing like that, but I just feel like it's a headache that I can't really take on right now. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, like, I kind of found my own little flow up here to where it don't really make sense for me to, like, I just feel like I would be leaving my piece for something that is like kind of just like a daydream in a lot of ways. Like, if I can't,
like an experiment.
If I can't do it up here, then I ain't gonna be able to do it somewhere else. It's kind of like my logic on it.
So I think it's good that we're talking about these things and just being honest with, different shadows that I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to. Just that feeling of, the solitary spiritual path sometimes, and like the struggles we face with wanting intimacy and connection and trying to reconcile that with our personal spiritual growth.
Yeah, like, think about it, though. Like, you think about the things that you went through to get to where you got to, your information, all that you had to learn. Like, if you just let somebody step into your kingdom or your castle, whatever, your queendom, then it's almost like, it just feels like it's not, it just doesn't feel like what you went through to get there. Like, I guess if you ran into somebody that felt like you could genuinely feel like, man, you went through a lot of the same bullshit, or you went through a lot of the things that I went through, maybe like around the same time, based on their own life, though, then I think that it's a little easier for you to, like, accept another person into your life. But, like, when you see, like, a person hasn't went through those things, it's kind of, that they can't really appreciate certain things. And, like, it's kind of difficult to want to, like, be benevolent with them, and because it kind of makes them weaker, and then kind of makes you weaker in a lot of ways too, because you're settling for somebody that's being weaker. And, like, I don't know. It's just difficult to want to connect with people that haven't generated to the same magnitude as you on their own, because then you're kind of always gonna kind of question their loyalty in a sense, because, like, it's like that saying, like, you don't really know who your friends are until you both get some money. You know what I mean? Like, If you know what I mean, because like if you don't have money, then you need them, and if they don't have money, they need you. But if you guys could still be friends, and you both got money, and you don't need each other, then you're really friends.
Interesting. And I mean, you obviously have put in a lot of work into yourself with your breatharian lifestyle that I feel like a lot of people are very fascinated by, you know, someone even being able to do that, the amount of discipline that it takes to really cut out these thousands of toxins in our food and in our environment, and just like you're living aligned in nature, and just, you know, it seems like
you want to just protect that though. You know what I mean? Like you really feel like, man, after all of this I went through, I can't just toss this away. You know, I can't just be frivolous with this. You know?
Right. So, going back to the journey with the semen retention, and you were telling me in our last conversation how it sort of was the jumping off point that led to everything else in your personal development, right?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Like it made everything else so much easier. Once I controlled the sexuality, then, you know, everything else fell into place. Like it really was kind of the basis of things. I guess that's why they call it the root or whatever. But it's once I got that out the way, once I got the sexuality controlled, and I got the just a different perspective. Once there was more blood in my brain, because, you know, it's just less blood in people's brains if they constantly release. You know,
right?
It's just they're constantly regenerating those sexual organs and those sexual fluids and brain and spinal fluid, and so they never really reach that full cognition that they could reach. So it's just a lot of people they never get the contrast to say, like, hey man, maybe this isn't the way to live.
What do you think? Like, what do you think the average guy who is just consuming pornography and in the lifestyle of, pickup, meeting women, hooking up, like, what do you feel that he's missing out on?
He just doesn't have enough blood in his prefrontal lobe. And so it's impossible for him to evolve or to see other states of being within his own body. Like, it's just not possible. You know? Like, he's literally, like, lobotomized in a lot of ways, like, sexually lobotomized. Like, it's kind of how I look at it. Like, he just can't, he can't think from that different echelon of being. You know, because the prefrontal lobe is what regulates the spiritual faculty. You know, that's the part of the brain that is connecting you to the consciousness. So the super consciousness or the ultimate consciousness, or whatever. So, like, if you're constantly releasing, then you're just not even inhabiting that part of your body. Like, that part of your body just doesn't get the circulation that it should. So you don't inhabit that part. So parasites do, because all energy gets used. So if you don't inhabit a part of your body, something will use that energy.
Like, so, the energetic vacuum, right? Like, there can't be any vacuums.
Yeah, like, it's just, it's getting pushed out of you, you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna get pushed out of you. Like, it's constant pressure. Life, in a lot of ways, is pressure. And that's kind of really what I learned from a lot of this is, like, especially with the tantric sex, is like, if you control your bodily blood pressure and all the other pressures in your body, then all the other pressures in life are pretty much secondary. It's nothing, because from the inside, your pressure is smooth. So you're cool. You know, you're calm and you're collected when you greet things in your life. But if your blood pressure is high, then you're most likely lose temperature control, and then because then you're losing your pressure control, and then when you lose temperature control and you heat up, that's when you will either release emotion, or if you're having sex, then you know the blood wells up in one spot, it gets too hot, you can't control it, then you release. So everything is really a pressure. It's a pressure control because it's a constant pushing. Like everything in life is pushing. Like when you inhale, your lungs push outward for you to accept the breath, and it's like there's really no pulling. You know, like in life, there's no real astringence. It's all pushing. Like as far as what people call astringence, it's a pushing. It's like the lemon or whatever it is pushes on your tissue, then the tissue pushes back, and that releases all the plaque and the toxins or whatever that's coated on the tissue. So it's like the same thing in life. Like, you know, when you push on life a certain way, life pushes back at you a certain way, and then you get a release of energy. So like it's people are pushing from the pressure is at a very low part of their being. So it's just they're not, you know what I mean? Like they're always going to get a certain kind of response until they find it in themselves to see value in something else, you know. And who knows how long that could take for an individual, where they're at in their development. Who knows really? So for the average guy that's just going around pushing these same buttons, he's going to get the same responses until he realizes, like, you know, that he doesn't see that separation anymore. He doesn't look at things as self and other anymore. If he just sees it as oneness, then he can stop pressing the buttons that he wants to press, and then just start to let life apply the pressures that would evolve him. So for most people, I can't even really hold it against them. Like, they're pretty much, the consciousness is locked in that place. So they need contrasting experiences that could give them, you know, insight as far as like a different value system and like a different way of living and a different way of play, you know, experiencing pleasure and that type of thing. So I feel like most males, like, they probably won't get that in their lifetime. And, you know, unless they have, like, a massive calamity or something. Or a lot of people, even if they do have that, they just get caught up in the depression or the PTSD to where they don't pick themselves up by the bootstraps and say, hey, man, how can I approach life a different way? They just continually try to fit the round peg in a square hole and continue to try to apply the same pressure, even though it's a new test now. It's not the same test anymore, but they don't want to get to a different level of responsibility. So, because once you show yourself a different level of energy and a different level of responsibility that you can handle, there's no going back. So that's why a lot of people choose to stay ignorant, because as soon as they've shown themselves, they can no longer really lie to themselves with the same efficacy. So it really kind of boils down to that, you know, like people don't want to experience a different value system, because then it'll bring out a part of them that is in alignment with their idea of themselves. Like, say, like, you know, a person says, like, I don't like children or whatever, and that's just like an absolute way to look at life, just because they don't want to be exposed to what children can bring out of them, so that they can see this other shade of them, so that they can incorporate it, so that they can be more complete from moment to moment. And the more complete you are, the less you need, the less you desire, because everything becomes you. And people don't want to be complete. People don't. They rather reach. People really, you know, they don't want the responsibility. They like to complain. Most people. It's like
True.
It's like a desire, like anything. Desiring to complain.
Right. So you feel that if you can master your sexuality and that sexual discipline, then it leaks into other parts of your life, like other addictions or other places where you seek to fill the void.
All of that gets exposed. As soon as you get sex controlled, then you're going to have to go, you're just going back further to where the way you used to live before you were sexually active, before you really even cared about sex like that. As soon as you control sex, you're going back to 7 years old and younger. And so, and some people probably was, sexual even a little bit before then. So, if you're going back to almost infancy state of being, and that's why I said the infinite energy. The infinite energy is where you're getting back to that infinity, and that's what I mean. Like babies, when you look at babies breathe, they breathe from their diaphragms. They fully expand. But the traumas make a person, whether it's vaccines, circumcision, people yelling in their household or whatever, traumas around them make them breathe shallow. And since they stop breathing properly at 2 or 3 years of age, and taking into account that they were going through amnesia from vaccines probably, then people don't realize they haven't been breathing properly for decades. So after you control your sexuality, you're getting back to your breath, because that's what controlling your sexuality really is. The more you are in tune with your breath,
right,
the more you can control your sexuality. Because if you're breathing 18 or more breaths per minute, you're going to be thinking about food, sex, sleep. You're going to oscillate between those basic carnal things. And the less you breathe per minute, then your desires change. So the more that you're getting in control of your sexuality, the closer you're getting to your breath. So then the closer you get to your breath, the more you're going to get to the point where you stop breathing properly and all the traumas that created that. So that's why people shun it, push it away, because it's a deep trauma, a deep cyclical trauma that's there probably from, infancy or really young age, 5, 6, 7, before they were sexual, and then, people became sexual and they got lost in that. But once you get that sexuality controlled, now you're going back to the real deep idiosyncrasies and the deep, the reasons why, you're psychoanalyzing why you're doing the things you're doing and what age that you're behaving from. And that's a whole other can of worms. A lot of people don't want to go down that path, but that's where you get brought to once you get the sexual aspect controlled. Now you're getting into that old trauma, those old behaviors, those things that were buried decades ago. And that's the root of it all, though. So once you get that out the way, once you get that, I was lacking affection at this point, then I started breathing heavily and rushed or whatever it was. And then so since I didn't feel affection, then I started craving sweet foods and soft foods. And then that kind of turned over into craving alcohol, because I was eating alcohol-forming foods. Then I craved the alcohol because I was having all these starches or bad food combinations. And then, so now I'm in this setting with other people that have this same trauma, because we're all doing the same chemical. So everybody has the same dysfunction.
It's a collective social dysfunction, right? The sexual, the overt sexuality and the dynamics play to not just the individual thing, but what everyone's kind of facing in common, I feel like.
Yeah. And then so, you're getting around people that are deteriorating at the same pace as you, and they're becoming, because everybody is what they eat and they ingest, they're becoming soft and flabby as the years go on. And people,
You mean their bodies or what?
Yeah, their bodies. Yeah, as soon as your brain gets sloppy, the body follows. So it's when people start, craving these soft foods and sweet foods, and then they crave the alcohol that gets created from it, then they actually crave alcohol. Then they crave the settings that come with it, and then they crave the people that come with it. And a lot of times it's somebody similar to their mother or father. You see a lot of people going and getting people that are in the same condition as their mother, even if she's, not in shape, because it's a comfort level there, and it feels like it fills that void, and it's like it's a deep thing once you get into it, like as far as like why people do what they do.
Right. I think like at a quantum level, like those energies and those traumas, they're trapped and they seek to be processed and released. I think the energy, it magnetizes the experiences that can reflect to you like what's hidden in your subconscious. Kind of like what Carl Jung talks about, that, the subconscious will run your life and you'll call it fate, And I think obviously all the contrast, it serves a purpose, and it's just about, do you want to evolve? Are you going to allow these experiences to serve you? Are you going to stay in the same cycles and in the same patterns? And it's interesting because in Tantra, when your energy is engaged in these tension and release orgasms, which is what most people understand sexuality to be, a lot of people feel that when you feel a sexual urge, it's like you scratch that itch, so you feel and you release. It's tension release, which keeps that energy in your lower chakras, the root and the sacral and the power, and we see that like playing out collectively, like the survival and the power plays and everything like that. And when you understand and you learn how to control that sexual energy and bring it up to your higher centers, you're able to connect with that divine source energy and completely shift your inner state.
Yeah, it's really just fully inhabiting the body, because the subconscious is essentially whatever part of you that you're not fully inhabiting. So if your blood is allocated to sexual reproduction and digestion most of the time, then you're not really allocating, you're not really inhabiting those other areas of your body. You're not what people call upper chakras and stuff. Those centers you have no presence in those centers. So that's, it's all blind basically. So you're constantly getting things thrown at you that are coming from those places that you don't inhabit. It's like, at some level, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy to destroy yourself. So, it's kind of like a separation within your own body, because, like I was saying, like, people they'll eat food based on what their tongue says, and then sacrifice all the other organs that are involved with digestion. So it's kind of the same thing with people. Like they'll get involved with people that are satisfying to one area of their body, that sacrifice the other areas of their body for it. And so those other areas of the body pretty much conspire to destroy the body. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty much like what's going on. Like it's, as much as I want to say like parasites is malevolent or against you, they're pretty much doing God's work in a lot of ways. Like if you give up this space and this energy, then this area of you is going to get turned against you to destroy you, so that that life can not have to live through you anymore.
So you're saying the parasites come in through the void of the lack of sexual energy circulation.
Well, like a parasite, like being like a parallel site. So like basically like your social media is a parasite of your concept of yourself. Your concept of yourself is a parasite of your persona. Your persona is a parasite of your body. Your body is a parasite of your soul. And, if you could stop there or go back to source or whatever, soul, oneness, whatever. So basically, it's kind of like how it's going down. Like, parasites, that's pretty much it. It's something that is filling a space that, like, you can look at your social media you as, like, the two-dimensional you, and then your body as, like, your three-dimensional you, and whatever, astral body, whatever, all that is a different layers of you. So, like, the parasites themselves they're just doing their job, like, whenever you have a concept of yourself or idea of yourself that you identify with, first of all, like, if you're the definer, you're the one that is creating the definition. The definition of self will never be able to encompass you. Like, if you define yourself, you're the definer, so the definition can never grasp you. So as soon as people say, like, this is where I am, this is me, this is that I identify with, I don't know, some part of this, the Zeus circle or the Zodiac, whatever, the people that are identifying with concepts, and that's what creates parasites, because it's incomplete. That's why, if you don't know yourself, then you can be yourself. But as soon as you know yourself, you've already created parasites. Because
it makes me think of kind of like the quantum superposition, and like once there's a point of perception, then it creates that reality.
Yeah, like every concept is limiting, And
right.
every time you say, like, this is what I am, then it's coming from that rational left brain thinking where you're like, okay, this is me, this is the rug, this is the chair, this is the ceiling, and it creates a separation that gives a sense of comfort of saying, like, this is what I am, this is my definition, this is what I live within, and that's the limits. That creates limits. So that concept needs to be fueled, and it creates its own desires and hungers because you're living within the concept, and it's so rigid. You're not really living as the oneness. You're not being everything. So
right.
As you fuel the concept, as you fuel that emotional hunger, then you become physically hungry. It's like if you create a character that you're supposed to be at your job, then you have to slip into that character, and then it's so exhausting because it's not who you are. It's the shade. So you have to fuel that. You have to drink coffee, or you have to eat these stimulating foods because you created this idea of who you're supposed to be. So that's how you create. That's how the metaphysical parasites, which is the thoughts and concepts, how they become physical parasites, and they pretty much they're just a snake eating its own tail. They're just ending that cycle pretty much. The parasite's coming in, cleaning things up because you're leaving the responsibility up for something to do it. So you create a parasite or a concept that you can live within out of sense of comfort, but.
So you're saying the parasite is serving as the contrast to take you past identity?
Yeah, like it's going to eat whatever you give up. Whatever part of you that you don't want to embody, whatever part of you that you try to separate yourself from.
You mean like when you're not being the whole, the all of existence?
Yeah. So like if you're the observer and that's your identity, then it's not like you never get hungry. You never desire anything. That what I mean? So you're not identifying with hunger. Like, yeah, you could eat, but you're not hungry. You're not in need. Your identity is in that place. So when it's in that place, you have a different set of just a different set of values, or a different set of just the way you go about life is going to be different. Like, because the only way you can desire something is if it isn't you,
or if it's lacking, right? Like,
yeah, you have to say that, like, that's the whole Eve allegory. Eve eating the apple. Like, the whole metaphor is that she saw it as something outside of herself and ate it, but it's always everything is you. That's kind of the whole Breatharian logic, is that everything is you, and the only way that you can desire something is if you concede to the notion that something isn't you. And the only way to do that is to create limitation. And the only way to create limitation is through a concept and through an identity that is not ineffable. Because if your identity is ineffable and you don't know, because you can't know infinity. Infinity is infinity. It's not to be known. So you shouldn't even try. So
right. How can the finite try and define the infinite?
Yeah, infinity can't be defined where it wouldn't be infinity. So as soon as you start to give yourself a definition and a concept, then you're creating boundary and limitation. So then that allows you to desire. And then that's, where parasites come in, because whatever you cut off and create a boundary within yourself, whatever part of you that you're cutting off, the parasite is occupying and eating that up. And then, pretty much it's going to build and grow. The more that you give up that area, it's just going to continue to grow. The parasite's going to grow and grow and grow until it eats all of you, so that life doesn't have to live through you anymore, because life doesn't want to live in limitation. And so,
would you say that would you say that energy, the different energies within consciousness, are symbiotic, or are they competing for expansion? How do you see it?
I don't feel like consciousness can expand or contract. It's more so the way things can house it. And again, it kind of comes down to the identity. Like a human body, a person that is, they don't have an identity, then they can move in and out of certain, points of awareness. Because like they say, that which doesn't have form can enter where there's no space. So it's if you don't have a form or a set designated idea of yourself, then you can kind of step outside of your idea of yourself, and you can step beyond that limitation, and so it's really about how the body can house the consciousness. People just are not in alignment with the consciousness. It's not really, expanding or contracting. It's more so the body itself going through its contractions and expansions energetically, to where you get, you might get an idiot one day and a savant another day, but it's still the same body. Some people have, that way, where they could be geniuses in some areas, and in other areas they're just not, because it's just, the balance is just not there. The body is pushed into an austerity where it can't house the consciousness in a smooth way, because one reason or another.
So do you feel kind of like the consciousness and the body, do they sort of evolve together, for yourself? When you expand your consciousness, does the body automatically align with that?
It's more so a reduction of concept, which allows the consciousness to fully inhabit the body. It's the more that you desire, and the more that you fill your body with things of the earth, the less that you can fill your body with the ethereal things. So it's kind of all right, so say a person wants to gain weight. So they have to say, I'm not strong enough, I'm not big enough, or whatever. They have to create that limitation that they're not enough. So that emotional and mental weight becomes physical weight. So then they eat food and they take on these things that inhibit the flow of the breath through the body. And then when the cells can't breathe, then the consciousness can't flow through the body. So the consciousness is what it is. The consciousness doesn't expand or contract. It doesn't have form. It's formless.
Right.
So it's all encompassing.
So all these things, I guess we just try to, in order to understand and digest the knowledge, we try to use concepts to make it something we can understand.
Yeah, understanding. Understanding, again, is getting under something to hold it, attachment. So it's like that's people are definitely attached to defining things because they want to define themselves. Then they define other things, and they put those things in a box, and then they can retain their idea of themselves. So it kind of creates a level of comfort. If I can define you and these things that you do, or these other objects in my environment, then that gives credence to my idea of myself. And I just feel like it's all just the limitation. People are addicted to limitation because it feels like it feels good. It feels like, well, I chalk it up to something outside of me, but everything is you. So the more that you give into limitation, the more that you literally make your power outside of you. And, then you have to deal with you, because that's what you're manifesting, You're pretty much saying, like, if I can't control it, then it must be not a part of me. So, you're gonna be constantly controlled by the outside world as you give that idea energy.
Right. What about the idea that essentially the universe created a split within itself so that it could experience itself, and the idea that you can utilize desire as a way to further kind of just this human experience and to use that to propel and to grow yourself. Because can you really get rid of desire if even the desire to not desire is a desire? Is it realistic for us to completely not have any?
I mean, contentment is it is what it is, Like, to just be content is kind of like one of those things where you're like, okay, if I'm alone, how can I prove that I'm more happy? Like, and if I don't give a fuck, who do I have to prove it to if I don't give a fuck? It's one of those things like that. It just is, contentment. Yeah. It just is what it is. And like, I really feel like temptation is really, it's not going to go anywhere. Temptation is supposed to be there. Like, it's really our only guidance, knowing what not to do. When we look at temptation and we face it, then we can realize what not to do, and that invariably shows us what to do. And when it comes to creation, it's always the path of least internal resistance. The least internal resistance that you have, then you're going towards creation. And that's how the creator experiences itself, through creation. So, like the poem writes the poem, you can't separate the dancer from the dance. There's no separation between the poem itself, the person writing the poem, however you want to look at it, that's all one. So that's kind of how life is going to proceed and continue to experience itself through creation, and that seems to be. It really is. You can't make anything that isn't you. Everything is a reflection of you. Like we were saying last night, like you make a camera is designed after your eyes. If you make a speaker, it's designed after your ears. You make a car, the combustion system is designed after your digestion. And it's like no matter what you make, it's you. So it's like, the same thing, kind of like no matter where you go, there you are, and so
you believe in like effort, like the effortless creation. Like you don't have to try. Is it the ego that wants to try?
Yeah, I feel like trying is dying.
Wow.
Trying
That's
is
powerful.
Dying. I really feel it. Yeah, because
and we all just like, so many of us just do that. Like we just struggle. Like we want to struggle. Like we want to feel accomplishment. It's in the program. It's like,
again,
you win the medal. Like you strove so hard. You ran the marathon. Like, how do you feel a sense of self if you don't overcome some kind of obstacle or prove that you put in effort? How do you feel that self-worth, that achievement?
Yeah, it's the definition thing again, because like that's what I mean. People like to be against things, whether it's complimentary, they want to be against the lover, or they want to be against the system, or against their personal best record in a marathon. They like to be against things because it gives credence to definition,
To identity?
And again, yeah,
right.
And there is no self.
Right.
There is no self. It's only the oneness. So like the more that you try to feed that idea of self, the more that you're feeding into the persona and the parasites that come with that. So like it's kind of like just a definition thing, the limitation thing, and just not seeing the how perfect everything really is. The more that you see, again, like you said, self-worth, it's like it's a value thing, And I've been saying value system here and there, but values are really kind of they're relative for one, and they're kind of illusory for another point, because it's all human opinion in a lot of ways. Really nothing is more valuable than the next thing. The sky isn't more valuable than the water, and the earth isn't more valuable than fire. So it's like there's no values. The values are kind of like a man-made construct that kind of like interfere with the observation in a lot of ways. And like the more that you try to create value, you're creating separation. And that separation, again, is just coming from pride. It's always going to boil down to pride, because you got to lie to yourself to begin with to create that sense of separation. Because if you can lie to yourself, then you've already separated some part of you from another part of you. So then, you give into the identity. That's the initial lie. So then, as you do that, then you have to give this identity value and fuel and everything like that, everything that comes with that. And it's a slippery slope that it's so subtle to start with that people, they don't really realize what they're doing until they're really entangled in the damage. And it's all boiling down to pride. It's all boiling down to separation and pride. We're trying to create separation from other people.
Do you feel like you can see through that veil now? Like, do you feel that you can see that truth and sustain that vision now?
Yeah, like there's always a part of you that is always at peace. And that, as long as you identify with that presence, then it always carries you through the whatever fleeting emotional situation that you got going on, or thoughts or whatever that come and go. As long as you can stay in tune with that part of you that is always at peace and that is desireless and that is just pure observer, then you stay in that with that point of reference. It's not something you can really grasp, but it's like a point of reference, like to realize that this is the identity, or this is closer to the identity of the creator. So as the closer I stay to this and the attributes of this, the closer I'll be to creation. And the closer I am to creation, the more I can experience the creator through that process of creation. And that's the most fulfilling thing that a creature can do.
And do you feel that someone would have to necessarily sacrifice things like what they have in their diet, their relationships and things like that, in order to tap into that state of consciousness? Or do you think it's always accessible?
I think it's much more difficult to corral the body if it's obstructed. If the breath is obstructed, then the body, you lose the leash on the body. Like as much as you might want to be in alignment with this, it's just much more difficult if you have those attachments and those constructs obstructing the flow of breath. And like they say, man, if you want to be given everything, you got to give everything up. And then once you reintroduce it, you'll really see like what ways, as far as on the scale like of your heart or whatever, like does it really match up? Does this really worth weighing this against my heart?
So what would you say currently that you live for? Do you feel that you have some type of purpose, or do you feel that you're just pure observer with, no definite intention for anything?
Yeah, I don't really try to have a conscious intention of things. I kind of just let things unfold, and I definitely don't feel like I don't feel like a human. I feel more so in a human than being a human. So I mean, for me, like I guess the goals or the desires at this point is just alignment. You know what I mean? Just to stay present. I guess if you give it any type of title of desire, it's just more so staying present, because my life experience has shown me that that when I wasn't present, things happened that made me really regret not being present. So I feel like the more present I am, the more I'm available for receiving from the source, or whatever, however you want to look at it, life itself. The more present I stay, the more in alignment with creation I am. And creation is alignment. You can't separate it. Creation is alignment. Creation is a product of alignment. So that's more so it for me. Just staying present, paying attention to the alignment, and if things get bent or out of alignment, just accepting the process of that and seeing where it takes me, and fully being present for it as much as possible, because I feel like once you're fully present for something, then you don't need to do it no more. Like, if you really go and you're present for your addictive cycles, and you watch everything you do, and you eat your food in silence, and you're present, you're not watching TV, you're not talking to people, and you listen to your digestion, or you listen to yourself, the way your body reacts when you inhale smoke or vapor or whatever, then as you pay attention more, the more that you don't need to do those things. But the more that you distract and don't fully pay attention, then you're not fully doing them.
Right, and isn't that so fascinating? Because I definitely agree with what you're saying, and it's interesting. Like, you can actually transcend an addiction by experiencing it fully, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
As opposed to being half present and kind of staying in a loop. When you kind of experience it fully in awareness, and you can witness what drives that behavior and witness yourself, then it's almost like there's no more magnetic pull, because you just become neutral.
Yeah, you see it with addicts, man. People drink just enough to be able to drink again, or they smoke just enough to be able to smoke again. And it's like a constant cycle of doing just enough to where they can, because people want to want, they want to desire. You cannot want what you have. So if you have those full experiences, you can't want them. But people want to want because we've been trained to desire. It's like, if you don't have value if you don't desire.
Right. Well, I mean, what are we here to do if we don't desire anything, right? Like, what are you, or what is your value if you're not desiring? How is there a you anymore?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, losing the attachment to the you and this and that, and you can consistently be pleasantly surprised if you have no expectations of things and no desire of things. Then it's almost like your true desires or your ultimate will play out.
It's like ironic. Like, you actually get what you quote unquote want once you give it up, kind of, right?
Yeah, because you didn't know you wanted it. Because, like, if you feel like I know I want something, then again you're stepping into knowing, and you're stepping away from being. Because knowing is the ghost of being.
Right, and how many of us even know what we really want? Like, I think we think we know what's in our highest good, and most of the time we don't, just like through causality or through like outer circumstances. Like, we actually we think we have a sense of control, but it's just so dynamic that we actually have no idea what's in our highest good.
Yeah. And I mean, nobody really wakes up every day and says that they don't want to be surprised and like, just be pleasantly surprised. I feel like the more that you just make yourself available in the moment, the more that you're available for being surprised. Like, oh, I really did enjoy that. I didn't know I enjoyed that. And then you kind of meet a different part of you, a different area that you might have been neglecting. And it's kind of like I was saying, that's what the subconscious is doing. It's kind of consistently throwing this part of you back at you that you ignore until you accept it. And then you can fully incorporate it, and then you don't have to go through that anymore.
Right, like when we attract those unwanted experiences, etc.
Yeah, like it's like as soon as you put the wall up or something, you're gonna get that. You're gonna get the
like what resists persists.
Yeah, like if you don't trust people, you make them untrustworthy.
So I mean, just like how does a person like practically go towards this consciousness and towards this understanding? How do we really allow ourselves to stay present and to find that sense of peace?
Well, I'm always going to say the breath, because you can't have consciousness without breath. If you stop breathing, then you are unconscious. You're no longer conscious. So with breath comes consciousness, and with that comes presence. And so, when you're behind on your breathing, then you're going to desire more. And if you're on top of your breathing, then you're going to be a lot more content. And you're going to be living in a place of abundance, because you don't need as much, because you feel more full off the breath, off the spirit. So if you're behaving from that place of not needing, then it just I guess what people say, attracts more abundance, because you're just operating from that place, so you receive from that place.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a reason every spiritual path talks about the breath. I mean, spirit means breath, right?
Yeah, that's it. No matter who, whether it's Jesus, like John the Baptist said, like, I baptize with water, but the one that comes after me, I can't wear his sandals. He baptizes with the Spirit. You know what I mean? And I feel like if you look at Jesus as well, like or Christ or whatever, the whole thing about eating the bread, I feel like that's just a misinterpretation for breath. It's like, eat of my breath, then you have eternal life and everything. So I feel like, whether it's Christ, whether it's Taoism, obviously, you know what I mean? And any of the Eastern religions, obviously, the breath is paramount.
Right.
But, in the West, it's kind of lost.
Right.
The breath is fundamental. I mean, like I always say, man, the breath, it determines the thought pattern, and the thought pattern determines the emotional pattern, and the emotional pattern determines the behavioral pattern. Because air regulates thought, and like water regulates emotion, and fire regulates passion, and earth regulates your desires or your lusts or whatever, bringing things into embodiment. So it's all about elemental balance. And if we look at creation, again, it's kind of just alignment with creation. What creation is showing us is this perfect alignment of things. Everything is coming from less dense to dense. You got the ether or the air, which is gases or whatever. The gases get compressed, and that creates a friction, and that creates fire. So then the fire makes the air thicker or humid, and then that allows rain or water, which is just thick air. And then you have decayed light, which is earth. So that's kind of like the elemental balance of things. That life is showing us how it proceeds. And if you respect the elemental flow of things, then your life will be in alignment with the flow of things, and you won't be creating from, like, if you wake up in the morning and you have earth element early, then you're basically putting the bottom of the pyramid at the top of the pyramid, and so it's going to obviously topple, and you're going to have strife in your life. So it's all about arrangement, you know. It's just feng shui, you know. It's just alignment, arrangement, respect to the flow of things and the way things change, and that's really what brings peace, you know. Just proper arrangement, proper alignment, and then creation will come of itself, you know what I mean, or manifestation will just be as a byproduct of the alignment and the arrangement of things.
Right. How would you, for people who are interested in going towards the path of breatharianism, how would someone even reach that, you know, going from the modern day diet, like how can they step into that type of discipline?
They probably just have to start with the small changes all, you know, so you're going to start with 10, 15-minute breath sessions at every site of craving. And if you can't get the breath session in, then drink hot water. And just incorporate the herbs as much as possible. And your diet will, as you get the cells breathing more, because you're going to take the herbs are going to push on the tissue. And then the tissue will push back, it'll release the plaque, then the cells, they'll be able to breathe now. So then you have more of the body breathing, and as you get more of the body breathing and you're doing your little breath sessions and you get longer and longer, then you'll just naturally, your diet will fix itself, you know. It's just, the more you breathe, the less you want. So it's gonna boil down to how much you exfoliate in your internal terrain, and how much you do breath work.
Right.
A lot of people probably have to start with Wim Hof because it gives you the quick rush from the hyperventilation. So then you get a quick psychedelic effect and euphoria, and a lot of people are addicted to dopamine rushes and things.
I've had some really nice breathwork euphoria sessions. I mean, it's so powerful when you do that fast breathing, that deep belly, quick breath sessions. Like, man, like you can just feel like years of stuff just coming up in like minutes. It's honestly magic.
Yeah, like the quick breaths will give you your quick results to keep you on the path, and then as you slow it down to one or less breaths per minute, then you'll really get into the delta waves and the subconscious, and you're getting deep into basically conscious sleep. So you're going to be able to really find the root of any malintent in your body. And a lot of people, if they were meant to slow one breath per minute or less, they probably wouldn't enjoy it, because it's going to make you really hot. And then it's probably not going to be comfortable.
Would that be kind of like a 20-second inhale, 20-second hold, 20-second exhale, or just inhale, exhale for a minute?
Inhale, hold it for a minute, then exhale, hold it for 8 to 15 seconds, and then inhale, hold for a minute, exhale 8 to 15 seconds. Like, because you want to make that space between breaths as long as possible. That's how you know you're getting further in your development. When you can exhale peacefully and it's quiet and you don't hear your breath coming or going. So you're just consciousness. You don't have a perception of inside or outside. Your breath is completely silent. So then once you reach that point, then your perception it just changes. It's just a totally different change. You can perceive things from a totally different state of being and just be consciousness instead of being a human. And So yeah, one breath or less per minute is is discipline for a lot of people, but that's how you can really bring, because you're clicking into the parasympathetic nervous system. If you're breathing more than 10, 12 breaths a minute, then you're in the sympathetic nervous system. So you're in the fight or flight. You're in that state of being. So when you get into 2 or less breaths a minute, then you're in parasympathetic, and that's where you heal the most, because that's where you go when you're sleeping. When you sleep and you get into the delta waves and everything, then your body is breathing less breaths per minute, because again, sleep is just unconscious breath work. So when you're sleeping, you're actually healing more, and that's how people are getting refreshed, if they're getting refreshed at all. But a lot of people don't remember their dreams because a lot of it is just trauma. They're going into that place unconsciously. Whereas if you do the tumo, the 1 breath per minute consciously, then you're going into the delta state consciously, and you can find out why you do what you do. But if you just pass out, then you're gonna unconsciously revisit the traumas that make you behave the way you behave. So then it's traumatic, and then you don't remember your dream, and then you wake up tired, or you wake up, not remembering your dream. So whenever you remember your dreams, it's usually more refreshing and more healing.
Right, and I love that you bring up dreams. I remember you saying in one of your videos, dream comes from Traum, which in German means, you're saying it's German root for trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, it is fascinating, isn't it? Like, when you talk to people who are very kind of in the stress mindset, and they say they don't dream, or they don't remember their dreams. And it's usually, with a sense of spiritual awareness that you develop that dream capability. And I was just recently talking about dream yoga, which is a very high practice in Tibetan Tantra. And it's amazing, like, the deeper you go with this gnosis, how much you understand that the dream state, it almost feels like a portal where we can sort of access all these subconscious things and actually have an influence, a really powerful influence on this seemingly waking reality. Once you start seeing that this dream is not so different than that dream state, and when you understand how you can become lucid and being awake within the dream. And I think it's the same concept when you're lucid dreaming, or you learn how to be awake in this dream, and you're no longer a victim of circumstance, but a divine sovereign.
Yeah, like creation and reaction have the same letters, and the dreams are that level of being, of conscious lucid dreaming, or whatever you want to call it, rapid manifestation. That's the creative level. That's the reality. That's the actual reality. This is the reaction or reflection of that creation. So that's reality. This is the mirror, the matrix that's pretty, that the consciousness is locked into at this point. But most people don't remember their dreams because of the adrenal fatigue. People are drinking coffee and other stimulants that create that adrenal fatigue. So then, once you go into the dream state, the trauma starts to happen, or is revisited, and your body goes into that stress response where the adrenaline gets released while you're sleeping. Then your food doesn't get digested. This is where parasites come in, because when your food gets all bound up, when the adrenaline gets released, so your food is not being processed properly because the blood is leaving digestion and going to the tissue because you're in fight or flight. So the food is not being digested, so then the parasites can thrive even more. So if you're in a dream state with your subconscious cracked them wide open, and then the parasites can manipulate your perception of the dream because they're in your body, and they're being fueled by the food that you ate emotionally, that you didn't really need, but you emotionally ate because you felt like eating it. So, you know what I mean? So the adrenaline's getting released, then the food's not getting processed, then the parasites have a bunch of power within the dream, and then you have a bad dream, or whatever you want to call it, and then you wake up that one is, it deals with the consequences of that. It's just kind of an extension of that, because it's creation and reaction. So you have bad dreams or ill dreams, then it just bleeds into this life because this is the reaction to the creation.
And can you recap again kind of your understanding of the food frequencies and the emotions we seek to fill them with?
If you're frustrated, then you want salty or crunchy, whether it's chips or it's lettuce. And if you want bread, then you're trying to soothe your dissatisfaction. If you want soft and sweet or chocolate, then you're craving affection. If you feel like a pushover, then you crave spicy foods. So it's all the counterbalance. If you're really bitter, then you'll crave sweet foods. And so it's just the way it goes. The more carbs you want, the more bitter you are.
So how do we know when we're craving from nutrition?
The breath is going to tell you, man. The breath is the best compass. Once you get like a breath pattern and a breath routine, and you give like an hour or two of breath work in a day, and it becomes the focal in your life in a sense, where you're like, people are concerned with money and things like that or whatever, and that's cool. But once the breath becomes paramount, then everything else kind of shows itself. So it's just the organization, Once the breath is in alignment, then you can realize like when you're not eating from a guttural place and you're eating from another place, just because generally it's just dehydration. Most hunger pangs are dehydration.
Right.
The grumbles in the stomach or the belly, that's all dehydration. Most of 99% of that is dehydration or parasites. The fungus is just the craving, pushing on your tissue, trying to make you eat. So it's mainly just dehydration. So once you get through your hydration and you no longer crave salt and concentrates like that, because salt and sugar are drugs. Because by definition they're drugs because they're isolated and concentrated. So
wow.
You can get sodium from plants though. You can get it from celery juice. You don't need to get sodium from a crystal. So once you don't want salt anymore, because
I just want to talk real quick what I'm sure a lot of people might be thinking, and it's just maybe it's coming from programming or whatever, just social norms. But how do we reconcile the idea of okay, we don't need this, if maybe you don't need food, why are we biologically built sort of with these teeth and whatever, people argue like, well, if it wasn't natural, we wouldn't be doing it. Or, people who are, there's a whole army against, veganism, they call it vegan deterioration, like, look how they're emaciated and this and that. Like, how do you counter that argument?
Well, I mean, as people are going to call emaciation or being svelte or whatever. A lot of that is just not being inflamed. People have identified strength with inflammation and swelling. Swellmates is a hashtag right now. So I mean,
so you think most of these like muscle guys in the gym are just inflamed?
No, that is what they are. They're swollen. That is an injury. It's an emotional injury. Feeling like you need to gain weight. That's an emotional injury. So then you physically injure your body, consistently working it out and leaving the blood in the tissue all the time and not in your organs. You're starving your organs and brain. And so now your blood is always in your tissue, and so it's always in your muscle. So you're swollen. You're swollen with blood, pus. That the body is swollen. That's the swelling. That's inflammation. That's the first symptom of all diseases or injuries. Inflammation is the first sign of disease.
So what is the healthy masculine body supposed to look like?
It would be towards like the indigenous Africans. It's probably what you're more going to have to look at. Your super dark-skinned indigenous Africans that don't really eat much, that still are still cut up because their body, the template is less deteriorated. But like as far as
do you think the melanin content has something to do with the appearance of health as well?
For sure, yeah. Vibrance is light. High vibration is color.
Right.
You know
What about the like
so,
geographical things? You know, like it's like snows in Europe and da da da.
Polar bears have black skin.
Sorry?
Polar bears have black skin, and the Eskimo is still darker than the Western European. People lose color because of fungus.
Wow.
It's a fungus. It's not anything but that. It's a fungus. It's candida. It's thrush.
So candida depletes melanin?
Yeah, the more that the liver is overrun by candida, the more that the skin is more pale.
Would you say like most people consuming the modern diet have candida?
Yeah, everybody has some level of candida because it's a fungus, but you know, people are overrun by it to where it's in their brains, controlling their liver, completely controlling the system, to where you know they're living for the candida. So yeah, I mean, most people, yeah, candida is a huge issue. I mean, you have a society of people that all want to drink and that crave carbs. So that's all candida food. Alcohol, carbs, even the high fruit diets. There's a bunch of ethanol in the fruit.
You mean like the raw vegan, the fruitarian?
Fruitarian, yeah, most fruits have high, because the fruits have been designed, they're not natural. They've been designed to be juicier and sweeter. So they have more fructose per gram than they really would naturally have. They have less seeds. And so this is, you know, it's already an imbalance in them genetically. So, you know, they create more ethanol, more alcohol, because the candida will eat the ethanol in the fruit, and then that creates the alcohol in the body, and then that creates the alcohol tolerance in the person. So even the high fruit diet is an alcoholic diet. It's, you know, pretty much across the board, the whole world is alcoholics, just different levels of alcoholics, you know, whether you're fruitarian.
Right, like the alcohol, I was reading something super fascinating about, like, your gut actually, like, ferments things into alcohol. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, the candida does it.
Right. That's insane.
Because all the food that you don't need, parasites manifest to eat it. This is how it goes, and that's what I'm saying. As far as the digestive system is designed to process vibration. I mean, we've made it really, really slutty to where everything is swollen and bloated and expanded to where now people say, like, you know, this is for this. This is for eating these big chunks of food. But the car, which is designed after our digestive system, which turns liquid into vapor and combusts it and makes it go, you know, however many hundreds of horsepower and, you know...
That's a very amazing observation. It really does, actually. Like the muffler and the exhaust and everything. Like it...
Yeah, and cars only run off of air and liquid. That's all they run off of. And they go hundreds of miles an hour. And then, you know what I mean? So it's not that chunky food makes you any better. So
it's just such deep programming, man. Like it's, you know, it's like something you're doing since you're an infant. Like how do you convince yourself that you've been doing something unnecessary your entire life?
Yeah.
And especially with the collective and, like, you know, just feeling like that eccentricity, like being that only person that's like, no, you don't actually need this.
Yeah, then, you know, but then it's just your connections, they might seem far and few in between based on your training, because we're trained in a microwave generation to where we want constant, you know, at this point in my life, since things have slowed down for me because I slowed down my breath, like, I really wouldn't mind actually writing actual letters in cursive to other people and just communicating that way for the rest of my life. Just like, you know, like living that way really don't bother me because my patience is in a different place because my breath is in a different place. So, like, it really just people, you know, you're talking to people that have never afforded themselves other breath patterns, so they can only give you what they've experienced. So, like, have teeth for chewing food. But at the same time, you look at it like a bird. Because again, creation is alignment. A bird sings because it's aligned with creation, and it's singing because it's vibrant. Again, the bird is going to sing to attract a mate, because the mating is, when you're mating, you're aligning with creation, and you're experiencing yourself through that creation. So a bird is singing because it's divinely inspired. It's not singing because it wants to get a paycheck. It's not singing because it wants to have an idea of itself. It's not singing.
Right, and creation is meant to come, like, it's meant to be inspired, like, through the spirit, through the breath. Like, when you're aligned, you don't have to try to create. It's just created through you as a vessel.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying as far as, like, the teeth. The teeth are for singing. Like, we're supposed to be harmonizing. We're supposed to be with really tools of harmony. And so if the body's singing and breathing consciously, it'll be so fulfilled that your desires for food it just would seem extra. It would just seem like an insult to the alignment. So, like, the body is processing vibration. That's what it's going to do. Everything is vibration. Light is vibration. They can't be separated. So, food and all of that, whatever it is, those are all different densities of vibration. Whether it's water or whatever, it's all light and different vibrations. So, different density. So, whether you're chewing your food or whether you're attracting your food, or turning on music, you're feeding. So it's all, the body's processing vibration, and it's all for the oneness. The less you need, the more you are. The more you need, the less you are. So the more gently you can fill the void and achieve that state of oneness, the greater your state of awareness is, and the more complementary you are for life, really, as a whole. Because the more, if you need a bunch of things just to feel full, then you obviously have a way bigger void. So if you can fill the void in a more gentle, in a less dense way, then you can achieve that state of fulfillment, more rapidly, because it doesn't take, 24 hours to digest it, or, however long, whatever you're eating. So, if a person is completely empty, they can experience fullness easier. If you have nothing in you, and you fasting is part of your lifestyle, then whenever you turn on the music, you hear it more fully. Your cells are feeling that more fully, and they're being nourished more fully. And the void, you're filling the void in a way to where it's just more gentle on the whole system. Like if I turn on music and it makes my appetite go away, that's a lot easier on my body than stuffing carbs into my body, blocking the cells from breathing, creating plaque on everything that shit touches. Because, people are so worried about brushing their teeth from the plaque that the food created, but that plaque is created on everything that food touches on the way out of you. So everything beneath that plaque can't breathe, and parasites...
Are you talking about the intestinal walls?
Yeah. Or the liver, or, any of that. So as the plaque starts to solidify, calcify, the cells beneath it begin to decay and become acidic, and then the parasites lay their larvae in the plaque so that they can eat the plaque for you. Parasites really are kind of benevolent in a lot of ways, but the more that you give up territory... Wait.
Parasites help us by eating the plaque off the intestinal walls?
Yeah, but the more that you keep eating plaque-forming foods, then the more they flourish, and then eventually they just eat your whole body.
Wow.
So, like,
but isn't the intestinal flora, like, isn't there, like, fungus and what we would call viruses and parasites that are part of the natural microbiome?
It depends on your state of, how acidic you are, The more that you
But you can't ever fully decimate your gut flora.
Yeah, because then at the same time, you're killing all the humans on Earth. Because you got to realize, like, kind of like the inside is the outside. So the parasites, the worms, the flukes, the candida, that's all people. So, like, in order, just let that shit flow through. So as long as you don't feed the fear, and then you're not going to feed the body things it don't need, so then the parasites don't get fed, and then they don't stick around and linger and create a house in the body. They just flow through. They're just constantly flowing through. They're not attaching themselves to your attachments.
How would you say, like, with the current, the whole, like, collective virus, like, how is that playing out in relation to us as a microcosm? Like, how did this get created? Is it related to the diet? Is it related to, what do you feel like this is manifesting from?
Like the inception of the idea of the virus?
Right. And just the fear, just the fear state that a lot of people are in, and kind of just, this quarantine and whatnot, like, how did this manifest?
The people that are afraid have always been afraid. It's not like there's some new fear. That fear has just always been there, and it's just being played on.
Right.
So the people that aren't afraid, they're past that of being afraid of, microbes. Like you can't, if you don't have a nesting ground in your body, then the microbe will just flow right through you.
Right.
It's not gonna stick around. You're not even inhabitable. It's like if you're really, really pale, and then you go to, Central America where it's really, really hot, and it's just not pleasant. It's like the same thing. It's the same thing for a parasite, like if your body is in a high vibration, if it's in a high vibratory state, then you're just not welcoming. So it's anybody that has realized that, they don't have, that fear don't live in them, and anybody that is afraid, they've already been afraid for a long time, and the fear stems from something from a long time ago that isn't even virus related. People just like to be afraid because, it's just like anything, people like it creates separation, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Again, it gives you definition. It gives you a definition if you're afraid, like, it's hope and fear are like one of the biggest addictions, they're just phantoms that people love to give into because they create separation, creates this idea of something else outside of me can control what happens to me. And then as you give credit to that idea, the more it makes it possible. And it's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy that like you don't take credit for. It's weird. It's a weird thing because you're making it happen, but you're also saying that I don't have control over my reality as you make the reality happen. So it's really a wild conundrum.
Yeah. But you don't have any feeling that somehow this whole collective kind of reality had something to do with the collective internal state? Like, some people think like, this is some type of purging, or it's serving as a contrast. Like, do you think it's just, is there purpose to it? Like,
as far as like, again, this being the reactionary plane, and it's not the creative plane. It's creative in the sense that like you can create your social media persona, and that's that's like the reactionary plane to the 3D, the 2D. But so you say like the when you go into like the dream state or whatever, things are metaphorical and scrambled or whatever. Like when you get into this state, this 3D or this third dimension, whatever, you're looking at it, coronavirus. You look at it like, okay, it's the same letters as carnivorous. It's probably like stemming from that whole, like, like people, as far as that purge is concerned, people eating meat and that shift happening on a massive scale. Again, I feel like it would take mass calamity to get the masses to change. Mm-hmm. So there would have to be something like this to make people stop eating meat, or to have a meat shortage to where people would experience the contrast because they won't willfully do it.
All right, so you reminded me of something I saw you speaking about regarding, the 2020 Tantra, and you mentioned something, I believe that you saw from what's his name, the Kenny Martin Kenny, right? And you said that I believe there's like with the consciousness shifting, like a lot of people talk about, all right, we're going from 3D to 4D, 4D to 5D, and in order to make these certain shifts, like you have to be of a certain density. And we hear a lot about density and like the law of one. And so there's this idea of like the less dense you are, the more you can vibrate at that higher frequency. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, no, less is more. I think it boils down to just that less is more. Or less is everything. So, you know what I mean? Because I feel like it's just, the more you need, the less you are. And then, Martin Kenny, he broke it down in a nice way, like, some souls are Brahma souls, some souls are Shiva souls, and some are Vishnu. So you have your Brahma souls who are rapidly advancing and losing density and dropping baggage and attachment, and they'll be able to go beyond the aurora borealis. And then you have the Shiva souls that are spraying chemtrails, giving out vaccines, destroying people, promoting garbage. They'll have to go below the aurora australis, down to the lower plane of existence below this one. Then you have like your Vishnu souls that are in between, that are gonna just set up a new era in this realm of life. So, if anybody's familiar with the cosmic egg and that vein of thinking, then they get what I'm saying. Anybody else is just gonna think I'm, batshit crazy, but that's kind of, it's real, but either way, however you look at it, that which has no form can enter where there's no space. So the less form that you have, the less dense you become, the more you can enter into places with no space, or spaces that are more complete. Because again, like heaven is hopeless. There's no hope in heaven. There's no separation in heaven. It's complete oneness. So there's no desire. So for that to achieve that state of being within yourself, so that you can align with that external, or to attune your consciousness to that experience, you would have to be in a state with no hope and less dense, because you're more complete and you're desiring less. So you match that vibration, you match that state of heavenliness where there's no separation, so there's no desire, because nothing is separate from nothing else. And, you're formless, so there's no ego.
Right, but is heaven a physical place, or is it a state of consciousness? Or are they the same thing?
Yeah, it has to be both. Like the physical,
right?
Like the physical way of being will lead you to a physical place.
Right.
So, like, if we're looking at it as a physical place, the magnetic center is the North Pole. So, anybody that can follow me that far, they've already done their due diligence in that way. To where, every compass that you pick up points to the North Pole. No compass magnetically points south. What we call south is the opposite of north, or the center, because that's the magnetic center. So every compass on Earth points to this magnetic center. We call the opposite of that direction south. So you have this one center of magnetism, and I feel like that. Are
you talking about like the core, like the iron core, or?
No, I'm talking about the actual North Pole itself, like the actual North Pole itself. Okay. If anybody's familiar with the cosmic egg, they get what I'm saying. Like, if you're looking at life as a pyramid of planes, the Earth is a pyramid of planes where on the lowest plane you have Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter is the moon, Saturn is the sun. On the plane above that, Mars and Venus. Mars is the sun, Venus is the moon. On the plane above that is us. So Artemis is our moon, and Apollo is our sun. And on the plane above us, where the North Pole is, past the aurora borealis is the Garden of Eden. So that's where Mercury revolves. So that's what people call the black sun Mercury is also known as Hermes, and that's where you get a lot of Hermetic principles, from the, Hermes, from Mercury, from the communicative ability of Mercury. So the black sun of intent, whatever you want to call it. So that's your Mount Meru, that's your Garden of Eden, that's your center of magnetism, that's your tree of life. That's where all compasses point to, and that's your physical den of ether, or ether den, Eden. So that would be your physical heaven. And I would definitely assume that it's your vibration. It has to be vibrational match to even enter.
Right. So you feel like it's like an interdimensional form of travel.
I guess you could call it interdimensional. I feel like you can bring your 3D body into it if you've activated enough of it. If you're less dense and you're more fully inhabiting your body, then you can go into a place that is of high frequency or high vibration, whatever, because you match with it.
So, in Tantric Buddhism, there's the concept of like bodhicitta, and just thinking about, ascension and people and their vibrations and shifting and just like leaving this existence. With bodhicitta, there's a compassionate wish to save all beings and to make sure that happens. How do you feel about the idea of are we here to do this for the collective, for the whole, or if this is a dream projection and the self is the source, and the self is the source of all, are we trying to help other people get to this, or are we just going within? And how do you feel about the self versus other?
I just feel like every part of the whole is the whole, and that you kind of have to be your own ark. Like Noah's Ark, you have to be your own ark and go. If you create that pattern that brings you to that place, then you can't worry about who's following you. You can't really look back. You kind of just have to stay in the moment and continually, be the ark, so that you can go into that state of being. And I don't feel like.
So you feel Noah's Ark is like a parable for this?
In a sense, I guess, yeah. I just was, alluding to that, but I just think that you can't carry anybody to heaven. You can't bring any attachments. Everything has to bring itself. And so I really feel like that since every part of the whole is the whole, every part of the whole is every part of the whole. If you bring yourself in there, you are doing that for the collective. If you return to that state of being.
Right. It's kind of like the microcosm is the macrocosm, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting when you just think about, again, like the idea of the codependency, kind of like circling back around, and just there's a lot of, as people on the spiritual path, like we want to help others. We want to raise the vibration of the planet, but like how many of us are actually going inside to ourselves and working on ourselves?
Yeah, a lot of people would do that to police themselves. It's a selfish thing in a lot of ways, because
like the savior complex, like the Mother Teresa complex.
Yeah, I guess so. You could say that. And I was saying like that. So somebody is like, you need to be fruitarian. We all need to be fruitarian. They feel like if they say that and they're outwardly, that way, and they push that guilt, then they'll guilt themselves into being what they think they should be. It's the same thing with the veganism,
Right.
If I'm vegan, if I tell people to be vegan, then...
Or like the religions and the Christianity, and you're trying to convince other people because you're not fully convinced.
Yeah, and until you have practical evidence of I guess a better way of being for yourself, then it doesn't really make a difference, man. Trying to change other people, carry other people into different. It's just a fear. It's a fear thing. Like, like imagine if you could just like go into heaven right now, and it just was like I could go into heaven right now, but I had to leave everything here, and nobody will know that I've left, and this is where I went. But it's heaven, and if I go, then maybe I can communicate with people in their dreams or when they reach higher states of peace, and I can communicate for small moments of time, but I'll reside in heaven. And a lot of people still wouldn't go to heaven just because of fear, even though it might be the perfect oasis for them. They still just the fear. They want to be able to to bring somebody else because the other person gives them more definition again. Because they say I knew this person when I was in this stage of my development. They keep me living from this perspective. They keep me being in this concept or definition of myself. So if I bring them, then I can maintain that. So
sort of like how we have like people that kind of have that pride of like, we've been friends for 10 years, like we've been friends for 15 years, like they're my family, like that, those type of attachments. I feel, it's very taboo to talk about, but I feel definitely on the spiritual path sometimes when you're really leveling up, and it's, in my experience, it's somewhat rare to have such a big group around you be leveling up at that same pace, and those attachments and identities might sort of keep you from that evolution.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and then for sure, that's it's a shame. You should want for others what you want for yourself. And you do, whether you consciously know it or not. So, if somebody had the ability to walk right into heaven right now, I wouldn't want them to stay here for me. And that's how they should feel too. Like if you could literally just drive on up to heaven, it's a mile away, you go, walk in there, but you can't bring anybody, and you just got to go right now. I wouldn't want to hold you back. Like, and I feel like, and I would like to think that you feel the same way. But if it's anything besides that, then it's codependency. It's not really it's not really a beneficial. It's not a complementary relationship. It's more a connection, friendship, whatever. It's just two people keeping themselves bound in definition.
Right. But I mean, we talk a lot about the idea of oneness and the everything going back to the integration and the wholeness. So isn't it kind of part of our spiritual seeking to integrate all the energies together?
I mean, it's always going to start within and then manifest outwardly. So, right. I mean, it's always going to be an internal ripple that creates the outward ripples. So, I feel like, you fully develop physically and then you begin to undevelop. You probably fully develop metaphysically, and then you fully develop, physically. You come in out of the womb and everything, and then once you fully physically develop, with people's Saturn return, once your prefrontal lobe takes 29 years to develop. So once you reach that point, then you're already returning your rescension, because you've already ascended to the light, and now you're ascending to the darkness, which fuels the light, which is the basis of creation. And that's pretty much the process, is development, then undevelopment, or processing and then unprocessing, or learning and then unlearning. It's just like you completely manifest, and then you begin your process of unmanifesting. And I think that it is what it is. It's going to happen one way or another, whether you like it or not, whether you try to fight it or go with it. It's just going to happen. You just rather do it in a complementary way to where you stay present for it all, to where you don't have to repeat this. You can, yeah.
And I mean, what's always resonated with me is that this doesn't have to be an unpleasant process. I think that it can be joyful, it can be blissful, and the more you surrender to it, the more you can sort of enjoy the ride. I don't think it necessarily has to be austerity. I think that the discipline leads to peace and bliss.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately coming down to Wei Wu Wei, where you're working without effort. You're doing just enough work. You do your work, then you step back. You don't do any more work than yours. Then you let life happen. Then your work shows up again. You do your work, then you step back. But if you try to do too much at once, then you're going to always deal with a yo-yo situation, and it's going to always backfire on you. It's just like working without effort, When the more you try, the more you die, and the more you lie. So it's like,
right. But I feel that it's just so hard for us socially to see that. I mean, just thinking about, the recent passing with like Kobe Bryant, and like, I feel that collectively there's just so much admiration, for athletes and for people who just have like the hard work mentality. Like, you have value because you have accomplished what others can't. You have, like, broken these thresholds through effort and doing. And I think a lot of men look up to that. A lot of us, we have drive. It's passion, it's like we want that.
It's just deep fear. It's a deep fear. It's a deep fear of falling into obsolescence. Kobe was deeply afraid. Kobe was deeply afraid. The fear fueled him. His dad was an NBA player. He had a lot of pressure on him. So he was just deeply afraid. Same thing with Michael Jordan, deeply afraid. People that are like, massively successful in the tangible sense, they're generally just deeply afraid. Just for fear of obsolescence. And, with fame being famine, being what it is what it is, a bunch of people that are also afraid and have those same values are going to follow suit. So it is what it is. Like, it's not.
So then we get into like the social norms and the human need to belong and to feel valued. And, we look down on those who are non-doing, it's kind of like, well, what are you doing with your life? So it just feels to me like it's a solitary path to really embrace this doctrine of like doing without doing.
Yeah, I mean, like your body is your platform for your spirituality. So, and it's for spiritual growth. That's what the body's for. So I mean, like, as far as doing, the more that you do, the more that you have to undo. It's like, it's just you creating more of a mess. So that's just I don't really want. It's all about the attention you want. Because you think about it, like a lot of the attention of people that put others on pedestals, the people that are on that pedestal, they generally are disgusted with the attention that they're getting from the people that putting them on pedestals.
Right.
Like if you have a bunch of fans that are willing to do a bunch of, self-depreciating things just to be graced by your presence or whatever, it's going to make you disgusted by the fan. You're going to feel like, man. So people like Kobe Bryant, people that have done great things in general, they don't seek validation from the fans. They shouldn't. They're mainly going to seek validation from their peers. Like Kobe, like it doesn't matter how many people that are never going to ever play basketball at that high level, how many millions of people love and adore him. What matters to him is Michael Jordan's opinion, Allen Iverson's opinion. Those people. You know what I mean? Magic Johnson. Those people's opinions mean more. They hold more weight to Kobe than millions of people that are depreciating themselves and putting him on a pedestal. So like, that's kind of how it always is. Like when you do anything, whether it's rap or entertainment, you pretty much just like, if you're getting into a vein of music, you just want to be respected by your peers, because you respect them, and then that kind of creates a respect thing. It's not really like adoration. It's not really for adoration. It's more so like respect. And I don't know. What attention do you really want? Do you really want attention of a bunch of masses that are lobotomized, or do you want attention from the source within you? What kind of presence do you really want? You know what I mean? Like
that's deep.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well. Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, what else is there to seek or to discuss? I mean, it's all just kind of laid out, everything we talked about.
Yeah, like the things that are in alignment with the characteristics that are in alignment with your nature. Unshakable peace, unconquerable peace, accepting all challenges as something that is here to make you better, that nothing is against you, it's all here to make you better. That eliminates trying.
Right. It's trust and surrender.
If you have unshakable peace and everything, if you look at all challenges as a means of cultivating the divine nature, and you look at it like any adversary is here as a compliment to make you better, then it eliminates trying, because it's all ordained for you, what you need next to spiritually grow to the next challenge. And if it feels like trying, then you're doing something wrong,
Right.
I mean, look at sex, man. The more that you feel like you have to try,
right,
you're doing something wrong.
You can't try to have an orgasm. It can only happen when you surrender.
Yeah, it's like the more you try, the more you die. I mean, like it's inorganic. The more you try, and you don't even want the results of something that's inorganic.
And it's an illusion, because then you're just like you're living for the end, and then that end is like keeps getting further from sight, and it's just like you get lost from the present moment. You're not enjoying the present if you're trying.
Yeah, you got to use your own light to return to the source of light. You can't focus on the next thing and the next thing and the light at the end of the tunnel and all that. You just got to focus on that internal light, and that'll bring you back to the source of light.
Right. Well, this has been a very powerful discussion. I'm really grateful that we're able to do this again, and I'm excited to share this gnosis with everybody. Is there anything else?
I can't wait.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add, or that you kind of want to bring to people?
I think people should look into Bazi, because I know a lot of people are into astrology, but I like to suggest Bazi because it's more so about your elemental makeup, and it has to do with the Chinese zodiac and everything, but it's just the different elements and the different animals for your hour and the time you're born and the location, and it just gives you a different perspective. And I think people should just look into Bazi as far as that, and Martin Kinney. I think people should look into Martin Kinney's work. Just check that out because 2020 is real. December 21st is you know, I really kind of didn't want to be right on this one. It's one of those things where you don't
Right. I was
like,
like, damn, like he called it, like 2020. I'm like, all right, like it's 2020, and then boom, all this happens, and I'm like, ah, and then I like hit you up again. I'm like, wait, what are you on to here?
Yeah, man, it's a deep detachment that I'm preparing for, and it's just the greatest challenge. You know what I mean? We live in marvelous times.
Right. Well, thank you again. Thank you for your presence, for this alchemy, and lots of love to you.
You too, Scarlett. Yeah, thank you for this, man. Please, I guess, shoot me the link as soon as you get that up. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Really, really appreciate you. Thank you for this.
Absolutely. All right. Talk soon.
All right.
All right. Bye.